In Project Zomboid, surviving usually means looting houses, finding food, and finding weapons. But for this challenge, I wasn't allowed to enter a single building, except this tiny shack. No houses, no stores, no warehouses. If I stepped inside another building, the challenge was over. This is a story of hardship, soft ship, regular ship, and a devastating mistake that cost me everything. There I was, in a small shack on the outskirts of some farmland, less of a home and more of a glorified shed. Still, it had a few useful things, some books, including a generator manual, which was great, although completely useless to me as I'd started as an engineer. There was also a nice pair of bolt cutters, my first weapon of choice, and a few survival essentials, a hunting knife, some sleeping bags, and a compass that, despite being a compass, didn't actually work. I had some seeds, various tools, and a bucket to shit in. Honestly, what else does a man really need? It was time to head out and greet the neighbours with my bolt cutters. Since I couldn't loot any buildings, paying attention to what the dead dropped became more important. If I was going to survive out here long term, I'd need fuel for the generator. Unfortunately, the zombie population was set to high, which meant getting that fuel was going to be a serious problem. Luckily, Napoleon Daly was a serious badass. Actually, he had a seriously bad ass in the form of hemorrhoids. But because of this, he didn't spend much time sitting around and got shit done. After dispatching some more of the dead, I brushed up on my survival skills before foraging in the nearby woods. Everything seemed to be poisonous or broken, but I did gain my first foraging level. I gained another level, which is important because not being able to enter buildings means foraging became one of my main ways to acquire resources. I dump all my foraged goods into a crate and take my shit bucket to go look for a water source. I head to a nearby house and notice they have a barbecue, which could come in handy, as well as the jackpot I was looking for, a garden gnome. There was quite a few zombies here though, which I had to clear out first with my trusty bolt cutters. Even with Napoleon being an athlete, he seemed to tire quickly using these heavy bolt cutters. I also find a natural water pump, which was critical for my survival, and it wasn't too far away. I fill up my shit bucket with water, giving me 10 litres to take back to the shack. I tried to take the gnome as well, but it was too heavy for now. Damn, I bet there was some good loot in there, but a dark force prevented me from entering. I bit off a bit more than I could chew here, and zombies began overwhelming me, as I became too tired to fight them off. But France wasn't conquered in a day, and neither will this challenge be. With my last ounce of strength, I stomped the final zombie's brains in, and headed home. Not before picking up David the gnome, and sitting to catch my breath, whilst reflecting on my close encounter with death. But enough of that though, as my hemorrhoids were getting sore. I discovered various herbs on the way back to snack on, as food was becoming a problem. In doing so, I acquired level 3 foraging. Once home, I grabbed the shit bucket, which I now drink from, and used the mushrooms I found to make a bucket of mushroom soup. I add all the mushrooms and place it back onto the bucket table for later. I place David the gnome by the door to greet me every time I come home. Company was hard to come by nowadays. I started to put my engineering degree to use by smashing a calf skull with a big rock until it broke, giving me bones I had no current use for, but made me feel like I was doing something useful. It was time to sip from the shitty mushroom soup bucket. The soup, though tainted with feces, filled me up, reminding me of home. The next day, I take advantage of the rain and get some seeds planted. Being hungry, I was foraging for food when I got lucky and stumbled upon a zombie with a duffel bag. I also found a water bottle. I find some actual food for the first time in the form of wild carrots, which was nice because I was very hungry. I placed the fish trap I found in the water. I had no bait, but I hoped it would catch something anyway. I spot a family of bunnies running for their lives and spring into action, smacking them to death with my bolt cutters. Finally, some real food, and I could stop eating like a rabbit. I butchered them in the street and walked away with 9 poorly cut rabbit meat. Very nice. Now, I just needed to cook the meat and remember that barbecue I saw earlier. I picked it up, put it in my duffel bag, I guess. I began to cook the meat and defended with my life. I worked so hard for that rabbit meat, I wasn't going to let it get stolen by some forest bandits. I take a seat and enjoy the fruit of my labor. God, I enjoyed that meat in my mouth. It was time to fill up the water bucket, and I realized I'd only been here for a day, and I'd already got so much done, and this filled me with determination. Maybe I could survive out here without entering any buildings. I got to work crafting some tools, starting with a crude axe. I take a look at what's required to build the butcher's hook, and it required 3 carpentry, which won't be too easy as nails are hard to come by, and I don't have a saw. But building the butcher's hook would be essential, as it would make my meat go longer. I also craft myself a hammer, so now it was just the saw I was missing. I could make one from stone, but this required level 3 napping, so I had some work to do. I napped flint into stone blades, which I could then attach to spears, giving me a decent weapon to get my spear level up. Things were going well, until... Nah, nothing actually happened. I was just trying to keep you engaged. I just went foraging for a bit to find more flint. Now for the most dramatic reaction to a scratch ever heard. The foraging was paying off. I was finding all sorts of wild fruit and veg to go with my rabbit meat. As I ventured further from the shack, I faced the growing numbers of undead. And resting on a nearby haystack, I realized these bolt cutters aren't gonna cut it. No pun intended. But as long as I kept abusing the fences, I'd be okay until I found something better. I had basically been foraging the entire time I walked anywhere, and therefore hit level 6 fairly quickly. The next day I decided to go check the speedway track. Hopefully there would be a lot of cars for me to loot, and maybe one with a key. But as I got closer, the amount of zombies were getting concerning. Until I realized it was too much to handle, and scurried away. Back to the shack, I sat and devised a new plan, and got to work. I finally reached level 2 napping, allowing me to make new tools that would give me more XP. It was time to check on the fish trap, and I was pleasantly surprised to find some mussels and 2 crayfish. I had gathered quite a lot of food in my food crate. Some of it was unfortunately going stale. I ate some of it anyway, as I couldn't afford to waste food during these trying times. This, of course, made me sad, but that's nothing a good book couldn't solve. I used some of the wooden rods I had carved training carving to make a crude wooden bookcase to store our books in, and to start some carpentry training. It's nice to be organised. I make it to a nearby car park, which was swarming with the undead, but had valuable cars for me to loot. I make it into a car and get super lucky finding the key inside. It also had a litre of fuel, meaning I could technically drive it out of here, but I wouldn't make it very far. I end up attracting the attention of a bunch more zombies. And with me being very tired at this point, I had to make my great escape. But at least I had a functioning car now, so this trip ended in a huge success. The next step was just finding more fuel. The next day, I get in the car and head back to that car park to search the other cars for more fuel. Of course, the zombies were still there waiting for me, and I had to dispatch them first. I make use of a trusty fence to make this more manageable. They really weren't making this easy, but I eventually clear out enough to allow me to check the cars, and I find 3 litres in one. I also search a nearby bin and find 3 goodie bags inside. These are actually kind of fun because you have no idea what you'll find. First one, someone's old dirty piss-soaked hoodie. and some nuts and bolts, very nice. And the others I decide to open later in a safer place. I don't have a gas can, so I use empty water bottles to siphon out the fuel. But it's all going into this much cooler car that I also found the key for. I swear it used to be way harder to find car keys in this game, but now it's easy. And then I had 6 litres of fuel, which is still pretty low, but much better than 1. I take care to avoid zombies and not mess up my cool new mafia looking car. And I swore a vow that day to never crash a car ever again. My car was more valuable than my own life, and if I had a wife and kids, it would be more valuable than their lives too. That didn't count as a crash, as it was a deliberate maneuver to acquire free food. I check the fish trap again and find some mussels, can't complain as it's AFK. I mean, that doesn't count either, that zombie's clearly trying to commit insurance fraud. While driving past, I spot some outside refrigerators and I hit the jackpot. They're filled with food, and this means I can also steal one later for the shack. I would have taken it now, but at this time I was under the impression that my shack didn't have electricity until I got fuel for the generator. But no, it did, until it ran out like every other building in the game. So yeah, I'm dumb. I steal a bit more fuel from a nearby car and continue to do this as I travel around until I could get access to a gas station. I also make sure to take any propane tank I find as well for my barbecue. I arrive at a school heaving with the undead, but I wanted to loot those 3 black cars so bad, so I had to take them out one by one. Luckily, Napoleon was a master of strategy and stealth, exactly why he was named Napoleon. The last 2, and by this point I'd had enough, but I'm sure whatever was in those cars would be worth all my effort. This truck had 6 gas in it though, so that's something, and a matchbook with barely any matches. Never lucky. It's crazy to think how at this point how different the playthrough would be if I was allowed to enter any of these buildings. But instead I'm scrounging around in the trash like a little trash goblin. Ooh, a beer. It's time for the lucky trash bag game. First up, some leftover sweets and a burnt crayfish. Not too bad. A map, dirty shorts and a stale habanero. Some rotten sour cream, an empty glass, and holy shit, a metal baseball bat in full condition. We have a winner, ladies and gentlemen. The search through the grimy trash has paid off big time. We can finally upgrade from these bolt cutters to one of the best weapons in the game, which is kinda crazy because I doubt in a normal playthrough I would ever have checked through these bins. I take a quick drive through town and witness the huge amount of zombies here. If I was going to take them on, with these high numbers, I'd have to train my stats first. Or just risk my life trying to fight them anyway, that works. The sound of a metal baseball bat was very nice though, and made me feel unstoppable. And no doubt, it was way more effective. After a lot of zombie kills and a sleep in my car, I find a step van which I have the key for, which was a huge upgrade. Now this van I definitely will never crash, mark my words. And I get back to some napping so I could finally craft that saw I needed. I also keep carving random objects to get that skill up, as once our bat breaks we'll be using spears full time. I drive up to the speedway to take a look, and Jesus Christ, there was a lot of zombies. That was a bit of a scary moment, I can't deny. There was a lot of nice cars here to loot, but there was no way I was ready to take on all these. You might call me a coward, and maybe you're right, but I'm an alive coward. I find a nice cow, which I pet to gain its trust before taking its life with my blade. It's a matter of survival out here. No room for compassion when your life is on the line. I'm driving through a town when I spot a survivor with a hiking bag and a fire axe, so without thinking, I jump out of the van, plunging myself into chaos. But there was no way I was passing up on this opportunity. I decide my best chance is to abuse fences if I'm going to make it out of here with the goods and my life. Somehow, I managed to clear out enough and I'm able to loot the survivor, finding the fire axe as well as a hatchet and his hiking bag filled with various books and whatnot. The axes in the bag alone were enough to make this worth it. The only problem was that I had mistakenly left my engine on, in all the chaos, and now a horde was guarding it. I attempted to manipulate the horde with shouts and make a break for the door, but missed my mark by just a hair. Second try, and I managed to get more away from the van, allowing me to dash around and get in this time. A dangerous situation, but I am well rewarded for my efforts. It was hard to even drive around here as there were so many zombies. Insurance fraud. I cooked some of that beef up and store it in the freezer. Now it was time to train my spear skill and become the ultimate spear warrior, so these zombies would learn to show me some respect. I collect some more mussels and a tiny fish and begin stopping near some groups of manageable zombies to keep training my spear skill as it was currently very low. The maintenance levels would come in very handy as well to make my spears last longer, because every man wants a spear that lasts longer. Clearly looking for some kind of adrenaline rush, I stop at a very populated gas station to make a stand. Things weren't going too well. It's all calculated, I swear. Well, clearly, that was too much to handle for now, but at least I got some spear training in. I was determined to prove I had what it takes to become the ultimate spear warrior and prove my master wrong. I find my first firearm in the back of a police car, which may come in handy one day. It was time to put the axes to use, because I needed saplings for more spears, but I also needed logs to build log walls to train my carpentry up, since they didn't need nails to build. Although they took 4 logs each and only gave me 13 XP, so this was going to take a while. Also, I could only carry 2 logs at a time, but stupidly I was dropping all 4 logs on the ground each time before building the wall, when I could have just kept 2 in my inventory. Unfortunately, I didn't realize this until way later. It was a real man's work, but somebody had to do it, and since there was none of those here, I had to do it. I was only level 1 carpentry, and I needed level 3 in order to build the butcher's hook. Physical progression is good, but working on the mind was also very important to Napoleon. The zombies were blocking the road, but the last thing they expected was for me to drive on the tracks. If in doubt, become train. I finally brought the fridge to the base, since I figured out the shack had power the entire time. And it was time to do the old hook the generator up to the gas station and take a bunch of fuel trick. The zombies had adapted to the train tech. But guess what? I was a van the entire time. The cold rain soaked through my clothes as I plunged my spear into the walking corpses. But at least it wasn't warm blood, I felt. As in, my blood. As in I was being torn apart by zombies. At least that wasn't happening. With the generator connected, I was finally able to take as much fuel as I needed. You probably expected me to cut this out. No way is he gonna make us watch this entire fuel collecting process. What would be the point in that? Exactly. What would be the point in that? There's no way I would do something like that. There is no purpose in such a thing. I filled everything I could with fuel, including this wooden bucket, which is filled entirely with gasoline and not my urine, which I used to scare off coyotes. I had done it. I'd finally reached level 3 carpentry, meaning I could build the butcher's hook. Meaning I could build that butcher's hook I'd always wanted. Damn, she was beautiful. More elegant than any woman I'd ever seen. I took a break from the manual labor to rest by the fire and make my spear hard. It was chill until I set myself on fucking fire. Damn, my left thigh had been burned badly, but at least I was alive, unlike the bacteria that would have lived on the surface of my thigh. That would have all been killed. Why is that important? It's not. This took me out of commission for a few days, and I sat and thought about all that bacteria from my thigh. Just gone. I'd finally recovered, and it was time to take back the streets I'd once called home. One zombie at a time. Sometimes you kill an entire horde of zombies, with your only reward being the dumpsters to search. But that's the life of a trash goblin. But at least I got to return to the safety of my shack, search my garbage bags, and maybe find something useful, like a second Freddy the Fox toy. There we are, the fruit of my labor. I built a large clay container to hold all my water. I'd come a long way from the shit bucket on the table. Sometimes I just sit by the fire and think about all the things my father used to tell me. Son, it's all well and good having a big dick, but the bigger the dick, the bigger the hole you gotta find. And if you can't find no hole big enough, well gosh, you better turn around and swim back the way you came. I have a very small dick, but those words still struck a chord with me, and I remember them to this day. Here's a little overview of the stats so far. We've been alive for 20 days at this point and killed 545 zombies. I kill a pig with the sheer power of my mind so I could try out my new butcher's hook. This allowed me to harvest each part of the animal individually and even let me drain the blood into a bucket to keep for satanic rituals. Very nice. I may have taken that animal's life, but I put every bit of it to use, including the bones. I had reached a foraging level that allowed me to read this level 5 book I'd found. Then the XP gain was off the charts. 998 XP for finding a mushroom, 300 XP, 300 XP, 700 XP. And just like that, I had reached the pinnacle of all things foraging with level 10. At this point, I could even find my own dick. But what would be the point if nobody else could? I had this ambitious idea to build stairs and then build a separate platform up there for storage and to just chill up there. That's the first time my hat had ever come off my head, and I was not happy about it. I carried on building the wall around, but was in no rush until I had the requirements to build a double gate for my van to enter. I head down to the speedway and gaze upon all the cars I had dreamt of looting until I realized I could try kill them with fire. So I head home, make a petrol bomb, I head back with a molotov, a disposable lighter, and a dream. It was a disaster. I had crashed into a rock at high speed and the van was cooked. Still unaware of the injuries I'd sustained and the window about to break, I'm forced to dive out of my van into the horde. I get away, but the damage was done. I pause the game to take in the information and think of a plan. I managed to bandage my head and my right forearm, but I still had a laceration that was bleeding heavily, and with no remaining bandages, I try to head back to the van to see if there's any in there, but there were too many zombies. With the amount of blood I was losing, I was running out of options and running out of time. I make one last effort to take off my shirt and rip it up for bandages, but the horde doesn't let me. With no other options and no time, I embrace the horde and my death. I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. It took me a while to make this, so if you did, please do leave a like and subscribe for more. I'm back to making videos like this consistently now, so stay tuned for that, and I will see you in the next one.